The Houston Texans announcing that two players on injured reserve are returning to practice, and linebacker Christian Harris and offensive lineman Kenyon Green. They have 21 days to be activated to the active roster, or their season's over and they stay on IR. But coming back to practice is a great sign for both of them to be back on the active roster. Let's start with Christian Harris. I know a lot of you have been wondering, where is Christian Harris? We last saw Christian Harris on August 11th when he made his training camp debut for the Houston Texans, and the debut was cut short. He re-injured himself in that training camp practice, and we haven't seen him since. He's been on IR for the duration of the season with the designation to return, but he hasn't been practicing. He finally now will be practicing for the Texans, and he's missed most of the season up to this point. He's got to ramp up physically. I know D'Amico Ryan said that he's been working off to the side and he's moving around well and he looks like himself. There's still probably a little bit of a ramp up period from a practice standpoint, getting in tune with the defense, and then you could see Christian Harris back there on the field for the Houston Texans in a game situation. And man, could they use him with Azeez Al-Shaair set to miss the next 3 games? Al-Shaair was a player the Texans trusted a lot with organizing the defense, setting some things up, and they trusted Al-Shaair to be in some coverage situations as well. Well, Christian Harris, the athleticism that he possesses, you could trust him in some of those coverage situations that maybe you would have trusted Azeez Al-Shaair with. So with Al-Shaair set to miss 3 games, if Harris could come back before Al-Shaair exits his suspension, then the Texans could use Harris in the coverage game. And that's the big thing. I don't know what to make of Christian Harris because he finished the season super strong last year. In OTAs, he had an interception in coverage on Stefon Diggs, and he hasn't been on the field since then. So what do you make of Christian Harris? Well, I know he's super athletic, and I know he finished last year really strong. And if you get some semblance of that added to the linebacker room, which all of a sudden features a resurgent Henry To'o, will eventually feature Azeez Al-Shaair. Neville Hewitt has been a solid player, and Devin White's been a nice addition. You've got a lot of options there at the linebacker spot, and you can do a lot of different things, mixing and matching, putting linebackers in certain positions to match up with certain offenses if you're D'Amico Ryans. It just gives you another weapon. I think we should temper our expectations for Christian Harris. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. He's not automatically going to be the guy that he was at the end of last season, which was stepping in front of a Joe Flacco pass and taking it back the other way. But he is a solid player, and he's a player that you can trust once he gets healthy enough to be out there on the field. And it seems like he's on his way to being healthy enough to be out there on the field. I'd be shocked if he plays against the Miami Dolphins, but it's not totally out of the question. And man, when you think about a matchup where you could use Christian Harris's coverage skills and how physical he is, and the sideline to sideline nature of Christian Harris, the Dolphins game is definitely one where you could use Christian Harris with Devon Achane and how good he is at the running back spot. Jonnu Smith, the tight end for the Miami Dolphins, and how successful he's been in the past month or so. Christian Harris could be a huge weapon against the Dolphins if the Texans are comfortable getting him on the field. Remember, he hasn't practiced with this team since OTAs. That was June. Okay, the last time he actually had a practice with his teammates was June. So, again, temper down the expectations for Christian Harris. He's not ready for Miami. Maybe you get him for Kansas City, or certainly you'd love to have him for that Baltimore matchup when they've got Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry chasing around Lamar Jackson. And I got to imagine Christian Harris chomping at the bit for a little revenge on Lamar Jackson and those Baltimore Ravens. The other player back at practice for the Texans while he's still on IR is Kenyon Green. Now, Kenyon Green initially from Ian Rappaport was announced as out for the season, but then Rappaport corrected himself and said there's a chance that Kenyon Green can come back. And, well, it looks like that chance is coming to fruition. Now, Green was playing really bad when he got hurt, and he hurt his shoulder, and he was on injured reserve, and the Texans put him on injured reserve, He was not playing well. It was the worst football of his professional career, which is a short professional career. He was playing left guard. He couldn't pass block, and then even the run blocking slipped off for Kenyon Green, and he just wasn't an effective player for the Texans. And if Jaret Patterson had never suffered a concussion, we may never have seen Kenyon Green back in there. Green was benched in the middle of a game for Jaret Patterson, but a concussion to Patterson got Green back in there, and then Kenyon Green kept his spot until he was injured. He was replaced in game by Kendrick Green, but since then the Texans have opted for Patterson at center and then Juice Scruggs moving from center to left guard. Now, when Kenyon Green is ready to get back out there and play for the Texans, I believe they'll insert him back into the starting lineup. It's not really going to be a question of Kenyon Green versus Juice Scruggs. It feels like it's going to be a question of Juice Scruggs versus Jaret Patterson at the center spot. Green is clearly a better left guard than Juice Scruggs. The team never considered putting Scruggs at left guard and giving Patterson center opportunities in training camp. Nick Caserio just last week said that Juice Scruggs is a much better center than he is guard, though they've been happy with his production at guard. So it makes sense that a healthy Kenyon Green would be inserted right back into the lineup at left guard, and then it's Jaret Patterson versus Juice Scruggs for that center position. Now, is that what the Texans should do? Probably not what the Texans should do based on the performance from Kenyon Green. Now, could a couple of weeks down and a little bit of time to have the body rest and the shoulders feeling better and Kenyon Green come out there and be better than he was? Certainly, but he played really poorly there before the injury. It would be hard to not be better than he was. Can he get to the level that the Texans need to keep their pass blocking solid? The pass blocking has been better since Green's injury, and they made the switch to Patterson at center and Scruggs at left guard. The Texans can't sacrifice that pass blocking improvement just to put a player back on the field because he's healthy. They need to maximize the pass blocking and still have a chance to run the football. Now, Kenyon Green, he does move people in the run game better than Juice Scruggs does. But does he pass block as well as Scruggs? I don't believe he does. And again, the pass blocking has been at its best when it's been that Scruggs, Patterson, left guard, center combination. If they change that, does the pass blocking take a step back against their upcoming opponents? And you start to think about who they've got. Miami, from a defensive standpoint, nothing too dangerous. But Kansas City with Chris Jones, the Baltimore Ravens, always have the ability to put a lot of pressure on your quarterback. You've got to prioritize pass blocking, but there also needs to be an emphasis on making sure that they can run the football. Now, they got going against Jacksonville. That's a lesser defensive front from a running standpoint. So how do you balance that out? It's not a enviable position to be in for Bobby Slowick, the offense, and D'Amico Ryans as the head coach to figure out, do you immediately insert Kenyon Green back in, hope that he helps out the rushing game a whole lot more than Scruggs does, and then hope that his pass blocking is much better than it was, and keep Patterson at center? Do you put Scruggs back there at center and have the offensive line that was so disappointing for most of this season back in there with Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard? Like, how do you operate? That's something the Texans are going to have to figure out, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Kenyon Green right back in to the starting lineup as soon as he is healthy for the Houston Texans. So reinforcements, I don't know if it's always the reinforcements you want if Green's not going to play better than he was, but certainly once Christian Harris arrives and is active for a game day, that's a nice chess piece for D'Amico Ryans and this defense. What say you? You believe Christian Harris is going to be a nice chess piece? You want Kenyon Green back in the starting lineup? Let me know in the comment section down below on your way down there. Throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subscribe to SNL. Got live videos with Landry Locker from the Locker Room on the SNL channel all week long. You can find that channel in the link in the description down below, so don't miss out on any of that. Appreciate you watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.